The mirror in Victoria Miller's hallway caught the soft glow of the lamplight as she adjusted the sleeve of her deep burgundy dress. The color suited her. Bold, elegant, quietly powerful. Tonight was supposed to mark the beginning of a new decade, not the unraveling of everything she thought she knew. She glanced at the clock on the wall, 6:47 p.m. Adam and Lily were late, of course, but she tried to convince herself it was fine. Everyone ran behind in New York City: traffic, work, life. Still, the roasted chicken was cooling on the dining table. The candles had melted unevenly. The bouquet of fresh peonies she'd bought that morning leaned slightly to one side, a small flaw she didn't have the heart to fix now. She exhaled, forcing the air out slowly. Then a knock. Not a warm one, not a hurried one either. 3 clipped taps, almost mechanical. Victoria smoothed her dress and opened the door. Adam stepped inside first, tall, broad-shouldered, his eyes darting around the apartment as though assessing a stranger's home. His tie was loose, shirt wrinkled, posture defensive. Lily followed with a stiff smile, tugging at a strand of her immaculate dark hair. "You made it," Victoria said, trying to keep her voice light. "Yeah," Adam muttered. "We're here." Lily's gaze slid across the room, expression unreadable. "Cute setup," she murmured. It didn't sound like a compliment. Victoria stepped aside, hoping once they sat down, once they ate, once the warmth of the evening settled in, everything would soften. Maybe she'd get a real smile from Adam, maybe a genuine conversation, maybe the smallest acknowledgement that she mattered. But as they sat at the table, the silence pressed down on her like humidity before a storm. Adam didn't touch his food. Lily scrolled on her phone, tapping the screen rhythmically. Victoria kept trying. A question about Adam's company, a light comment about the weather, even a gentle remark about a new cafe opening near her office. But each attempt died before it fully left her lips. Finally, Adam leaned back, exhaling sharply, as though he'd been holding air in his chest for days. "Let's get this over with." Her heart twitched. Get what over with? Adam reached into his jacket. Not for a gift. Not for a card. For a manila envelope. Stiff and heavy. He placed it in front of her with a dull thud. Victoria blinked. What is this?" "Just read it," he said, jaw tight. Her fingers trembled as she lifted the flap. The legalese blurred for a moment before sharpening painfully into focus. Statement of disassociation. No further financial or familial obligation. Permanent relinquishment of... She stopped breathing. "You're disowning me?" Her voice came out thin, fragile, a ghost of itself. Adam didn't flinch. "I'm done, Mom. I can't keep letting you drag me down. You've never supported me. Not with my company, not with anything. You've always made things harder." The words hit her harder than any paper ever could. I've only ever wanted to help you," she whispered. Adam scoffed. "Help? You've been a burden. I'm trying to get investors, and you showing up at events, or trying to give advice you don't understand. It makes me look bad." He shook his head, disgust threading his expression. "I don't need that anymore." A small, sharp laugh escaped Lily. "Honestly, Victoria, if you had focused on yourself years ago, maybe you wouldn't be in this position. Adam's been carrying your weight long enough." The room spun, not wildly, but slowly, like the world was tilting just enough to make standing difficult. Victoria swallowed hard, forcing the tremor in her chest to stay there, concealed, unseen. This is my birthday," she said, barely able to form the words. Adam shrugged. Timing wasn't the priority, clarity was. She nodded slowly, her breath catching. She didn't argue, she didn't plead. That was never her way. Not even now, when the person she loved most had just cut her loose with the efficiency of a business transaction. Victoria stood. The chair scraped across the hardwood floor, slicing through the silence. "I need some air," she whispered. She stepped out onto the balcony, the cold Manhattan breeze hitting her face like a slap. Lights glittered across the skyline, buildings pulsing with life, people moving in every window, the city oblivious to the quiet collapse happening 6 floors up. Her chest tightened. Tears burned at the backs of her eyes, but she held them in place, refusing to let them fall while they could still hear her. She wrapped her arms around herself, grounding her shaking breath. Behind her, muffled voices floated through the sliding door, Adam's irritation, Lily's sharp tone. But she didn't listen. She couldn't. Not anymore. Finally, when the weight became unbearable, she walked back inside, grabbed her coat, and without looking at either of them, said softly, "Please lock the door when you leave." And she stepped out into the hallway trembling, breath uneven, heartbreaking, but something fierce sparking beneath the pain. She didn't know it yet, but this moment, this cruelty, was about to change everything. Victoria stood in the center of her now empty living room, the silence pressing against the freshly painted walls. Moving boxes lined the floor like quiet witnesses to the life she was leaving behind. She traced her fingers over the last box labeled kitchen and let out a slow, steady breath. She hadn't slept much since her birthday, not because of tears, but because something inside her had clicked into place, sharp and undeniable. This was the first decision she'd made entirely for herself in a very long time. Her new apartment wasn't glamorous. It was small. A one-bedroom in a modest building tucked between a laundromat and a coffee shop on the Upper West Side. But when she opened the windows that first morning, the sunlight spilled across the hardwood floors in a warm, honeyed stripe, and she realized she didn't need space. She needed freedom. The first person to step through her new door was Sophia Reynolds, wrapped in a coat that smelled faintly of lavender and cold December air. She held 2 lattes and a bag of pastries. "Well," Sophia said, giving the room an approving sweep, "look at you. Finally choosing you." Victoria laughed softly, the sound a little rusty. "Feels strange." "It'll feel powerful soon." Sophia handed her a latte, her eyes warm but serious. "You've spent your life giving people room to take from you. Time to build something they can't touch." Something shifted in Victoria's chest, not pain, not grief, but a spark of possibility. Over the next few days, she found herself doing things she hadn't done in years. She dug out old contacts, sent emails to former colleagues, and reached out to people she once collaborated with decades ago. She didn't ask for favors, she asked for conversation, the kind she had long forgotten she was good at, and they responded. Her inbox filled with invitations for coffee, lunch, Zoom calls. People remembered her, not as the woman her son resented, but as the strategist who could dissect a failing department and rebuild it with precision. The woman who saved teams, guided leaders, and solved problems others ran from. She went to her first leadership workshop on a rainy Thursday evening. The room buzzed with ambition. Younger professionals in polished shoes, older executives sharing ideas with easy confidence. Victoria took a seat in the back, unsure of her place. But then she spoke. A comment. An insight. A question that cut through the noise and made half the room turn toward her. By the end, 3 people asked for her card. When she stepped out onto the wet sidewalk afterward, umbrella in hand, she felt something she hadn't felt in years. Excitement humming beneath her ribs. Meanwhile, Adam and Lily began calling. Not persistently, not dramatically, but enough for her phone to light up every couple of days with their names. She didn't answer. Not out of anger. Anger was long gone. What she felt now was colder, cleaner. Distance. Clarity. The same clarity Adam claimed he needed. She wasn't going back. One night, sitting at her small kitchen table with a cup of chamomile tea, she opened a blank notebook. The pages glowed under the soft kitchen light. At first, her pen hovered without direction. Then she began to write notes, observations, gaps she'd seen in the tech sustainability sector while working alongside major corporations, opportunities no one else seemed to be noticing, targets she'd once been too afraid to aim for. Hours passed without her noticing. By the time she leaned back, her hand aching, she was staring at the beginnings of something real. The skeleton of a company only she could build, shaped by years of experience people had always underestimated. A soft buzz came from her phone. Another call. Adam again. Victoria looked at the screen for a long moment, then turned the phone face down. Her attention returned to the notebook, to her plan, to her future. A slow smile spread across her lips. Small, determined, dangerous. The knock on Victoria's apartment door came again. Steady, confident. Not the hesitant tapping she had come to associate with her own uncertainty. She opened it to find Ben Carter standing in the hallway, rain-soaked from the winter drizzle, his expression warm but edged with urgency. "Thought you'd appreciate a face-to-face," he said, brushing droplets from his blazer. "Your email. It wasn't something I could ignore." Victoria stepped aside and let him in, her pulse quickening. Ben had been one of the few colleagues over the years who didn't overlook her intelligence. He had that rare quality in business: listening. Real listening. He settled into the chair across from her kitchen table, eyeing the scattered notes and sketches of ideas she'd been refining nightly. "You weren't exaggerating," he murmured. "This is solid. More than solid." She folded her hands to still them. "I don't have the resources to pull it off on my own." "I know." His gaze lifted to hers. "Which is why I came. I want in. Investor, partner, whatever you need." For a moment, Victoria couldn't speak. Her throat tightened, not from fear or doubt, but from something more startling: the realization that someone finally saw her as capable of creating something massive. Sophia arrived 20 minutes later, breathless from rushing up the stairs, eyes bright when she saw Ben sitting there. "Oh, good," she said with a grin. "You heard her brilliant idea and didn't run." Ben laughed. "Not a chance." It didn't take long. Within a week, the three of them were signing paperwork in a rented co-working office with flickering Edison bulbs and mismatched furniture. It wasn't glamorous, it wasn't sleek, but it was theirs. And so Miller Renewables, a tech-driven sustainability startup, was born. The early days were rough, exhilarating, exhausting, chaotic. Victoria hired a small team, a young software engineer with a brain that raced faster than his words, a marketing lead who could sell water to a drowning man, and a researcher who brought infectious enthusiasm into every meeting. She learned quickly how to stretch every dollar, every hour, every ounce of energy. Mornings blurred into nights as she and Sophia pored over prototypes and pitch decks, surviving on takeout salads and endless refills of lukewarm coffee. But the challenges came quickly. In one boardroom, a potential client leaned back in his chair, smirking at her presentation. "It's cute," he said, swirling his pen. "Ambitious. You ladies sure you can handle something at this scale?" Victoria held his gaze, steady as bedrock. "We're not building cute, we're building essential." The man blinked, the smirk faltering. They didn't get that contract. But 3 weeks later, once her team refined the product and refined their pitch again, another firm signed without hesitation. And another. Slowly, traction began to build. Not through luck, through relentless work, sharpened strategy, and the quiet fire Victoria refused to let anyone extinguish again. Meanwhile, Adam and Lily remained blissfully unaware of what she was building. They lived in curated perfection, polished photo shoots, investor brunches, Lily's endless parade of social media stories featuring immaculate outfits and rehearsed laughter. They still tried calling occasionally, but Victoria no longer flinched at their names appearing on her screen. She simply swiped them away. For the first time in decades, she was untethered and rising. Months passed, and Miller Renewables secured a small but impressive foothold in the sustainability tech space. Industry blogs began mentioning them, quietly at first, in niche corners of the market. But soon larger publications started asking for interviews. Victoria declined each one. She wanted the work to speak before she did. One chilly March evening, as she walked out of the co-working building with Sophia at her side, her phone buzzed, an email notification. She opened it under the glow of a street lamp. Her breath hitched. "Victoria?" Sophia asked, noticing the shift in her expression. Victoria turned the screen toward her. A major global corporation, one she'd once admired from afar, one that never would have taken her seriously months ago, wanted a meeting. Not with Ben, not with the team, not with Miller Renewables, with her. "It's happening," Sophia whispered, a grin spreading across her face. "They see you." The city lights reflected in Victoria's eyes, sharp, bright, unshakably alive. The conference table was buried under financial reports, prototypes, and half-finished coffee cups when Victoria sank into her chair, rubbing the bridge of her nose. Growth sounded glamorous on paper, but the reality was late nights, tighter budgets, and the relentless pressure of steering a rising company through uncharted waters. Sophia set another stack of paperwork in front of her. "We need to finalize these projections before tomorrow's board call." Victoria nodded, though her mind throbbed with numbers she hadn't had to juggle in years. Burn rate, cash flow, capital allocation. Miller Renewables was gaining traction fast, but that success came with fierce demands. Every decision she made rippled through a team now depending on her completely. Across the room, Ben paced near the whiteboard, muttering calculations. "If we cut the pilot program..." Victoria shook her head. "No, that's the one with the strongest long-term potential." He paused, then exhaled. "Then we need more funding." "I know." Her voice came out steady, but the weight of it pressed deep. Corporate politics made everything harder. Potential partners wanted to meet with Ben, assuming he was the one in charge. Investors offered backhanded compliments disguised as advice. Competitors dismissed her as a passion project rather than a rising threat. She refused to bend. One afternoon, her phone buzzed with a number she knew instantly, a number she had once answered without hesitation. Adam. She stared at the screen for a long moment, the pass tightening around her ribs. Then, slowly, she accepted the call. "Mom," he said breathlessly, I need your advice." His voice was smaller than she remembered, not the arrogant, commanding tone he'd thrown at her during her birthday, but strained, defensive. "My company's not doing well," he continued. "Our biggest client backed out, and the investors are getting nervous. I figured, maybe you'd have ideas." Victoria's throat tightened, but not with sympathy, with realization. He didn't call because he missed her. He called because he needed her. "I'm sorry you're struggling, Adam," she said softly. "So, can we talk it through?" She closed her eyes. She listened, really listened, because she wasn't cruel, and she wasn't vindictive. He described sloppy leadership decisions, rushed product launches, sloppy pitches, mistakes she could have helped him avoid years ago if he had allowed her in. When he finally stopped talking, there was a long silence. "Mom," he pressed, "what should I do?" Victoria inhaled deeply. "That's for you to figure out." He exhaled sharply, stunned. Seriously? I'm building something of my own now, she said, calm but unwavering. I can't be your safety net anymore. The silence on the other end broke something in him. She heard it. Then she ended the call. An hour later, Lily struck. A tagged post on social media. A desperate woman chasing dreams she should have given up on decades ago. Underneath, a filtered photo of Lily smirking, captioned with faux sweetness. Comments poured in, some agreeing, some calling Lily out. But the cruelty was unmistakable. Sophia showed Victoria the post cautiously, expecting it to sting. Instead, Victoria smiled. A small, razor-sharp smile. Good, she murmured. Let her talk. And she worked harder. Her team felt her renewed fire. Meetings sharpened, pitches tightened, strategies refined. She didn't snap or crumble. She led with clarity that electrified the entire office. Within 2 months, Miller Renewables secured not one, but 3 major contracts. Deals large enough to push them into national visibility. Industry newsletters began using words like innovative, disruptive, visionary. Victoria found herself invited to conferences, roundtables, interviews. Recognition didn't inflate her. It fueled her. She had waited a lifetime to be seen. Now she finally was. Late one evening, as she and Sophia walked out of the office into the cool spring air, her phone buzzed again, not with a call this time, but with an email notification. Victoria glanced at it, expecting a routine update, but the subject line froze her mid-step. Confidential, corporate acquisition proposal. Urgent review. Requested. Her pulse kicked into her throat. Sophia leaned in. Who's it from? Victoria opened the email. When she saw the name of the sender, the CEO of a company tied directly to her past, her breath caught. The corporate acquisition proposal didn't become the turning point Victoria feared. Instead, it became the catalyst her company needed. A declaration that Miller Renewables was no longer a quiet upstart, but a rising force the industry couldn't ignore. She rejected the offer, choosing autonomy over comfort, and the decision sent a clear message. She wasn't building something to sell. She was building something to last. Within months, the momentum felt unstoppable. Their tech solution, a sleek, efficient system that optimized energy consumption for large-scale businesses, caught the attention of global corporations hungry for sustainable innovation. What began as small domestic deals surged into international partnerships. By summer, Victoria found herself boarding flights to London, Singapore, and Berlin, walking into glass-walled boardrooms where executives greeted her by name. The woman once dismissed as a passion project leader now negotiated with CEOs twice her age and closed deals they once believed only established giants could command. She stood center stage at a European Sustainability Summit, delivering a keynote address that drew both praise and headlines. American Visionary Redefines Corporate Sustainability was printed across magazines and online journals. Reporters requested interviews. Investors chased her instead of the other way around. And then the covers came. Forbes, Fortune, Fast Company. Her portrait graced each one, silver hair, sharp blue eyes, posture confident, elegant. The world finally saw what she had spent a lifetime cultivating, intelligence wrapped in quiet power, resilience forged through years of dismissal. One magazine wrote, Victoria Miller, the woman who redefined the rules of the game. She clipped that one out and taped it inside her office drawer. She didn't display it. She didn't need to. Knowing it existed was enough. Meanwhile, Adam and Lily's curated bubble began to crack. Lily's social feed started showing hints of strain. Fewer lavish events, fewer branded collaborations, fewer smiles that reached her eyes. Adam's company, rattled by instability, retreated from several ventures. Investors questioned his decisions, his leadership, And worse, his credibility. Their downfall unfolded slowly, quietly, in the same digital spaces where they once paraded their superiority. And then, inevitably, they noticed. At first, it was small things. Friends forwarding them articles, congratulatory messages for Victoria popping up in group chats, whispers that Adam's mother was becoming a major figure in the sustainability sector. Then came the moment they couldn't ignore. Victoria's Forbes cover trending on social media. Comments flooded in. Admiration, awe, celebration. Lily tried to pretend she wasn't watching. Adam tried to pretend it didn't matter. But it did. It mattered deeply. He dialed Victoria's number one night. His voice strained when she answered. "I've been reading about your company," he said, trying to mask the desperation in his tone. "I didn't realize how big it had gotten. I was thinking maybe we could talk. My company, we're in trouble." Victoria stood in her hotel suite in Singapore, the skyline glittering behind her. She listened, because listening was in her nature. But the ache she once felt when Adam spoke was gone. What remained was clarity. "Adam," she said calmly, "you made your position clear a long time ago." "I know, but things are hard right now. I just need a little direction." He was asking for the expertise he once mocked, for the guidance he once dismissed, for the support he disowned. "I'm not available to help," she replied, her voice soft but immovable. "You'll need to find your own way through this." He exhaled shakily. "Mom, please." "I hope things work out for you," she said, then ended the call gently. She didn't feel triumphant. She didn't feel bitter. She felt free. Miller Renewables hit a valuation milestone soon after, the kind of milestone most startups only dream of. $1 billion. A unicorn. Headlines blazed with her name. Congratulatory messages poured in from leaders she once idolized from afar. Her team celebrated late into the night, laughter echoing off the polished floors of their expanded Manhattan office. Amid the cheers, Sophia raised a glass. "To the woman who built what no one believed she could." Victoria smiled, warmth spreading through her chest. She'd built nothing for their approval. Not Adam's, not the industry's, not the world's. She built it for herself. But as the celebration wound down, her phone buzzed with a new email. Flagged urgent. She opened it. Her breath stopped. A national news network requesting her for a prime-time televised interview, live, broadcast globally. And the segment title? "The Billionaire Who Came Out of Nowhere." The studio lights were blinding at first, hot, white, unforgiving. But as Victoria stepped onto the raised platform of the national news set, something unexpected happened. The brightness didn't swallow her. It illuminated her. A producer clipped a mic to her dress. Another adjusted her hair just slightly. The host, a familiar face from evening broadcasts, approached with a warm handshake and a tone filled with genuine admiration. "Victoria Miller," he said, "the world has been waiting to hear your story." She settled into the chair across from him, the city skyline flashing across the massive LED screen behind them. New York glittered as if cheering her on. When the red light blinked on, signaling the broadcast had begun, Victoria breathed once, deeply, calmly, and began to speak. Not about revenge, not about pain, not about Adam or Lily, or the years she spent overlooked. She spoke about innovation, grit, sustainability, leadership. She talked about the small ideas that sparked global change and the nights she stayed awake mapping out solutions no one else had the nerve to attempt. She highlighted her team, their brilliance, their commitment. And she did it all with the poise of a woman who knew exactly who she was and exactly what she had built. By the time the interview wrapped, social media had exploded. Clips of her answers spread across platforms within minutes. Her name trended worldwide, Every major business outlet carried her story by sunrise. She was no longer a rising figure. She was a household name. Across town, Adam and Lily sat stiffly on their couch, eyes glued to the screen. Lily clutched the remote, the color drained from her face. I didn't expect this, she murmured. Adam barely heard her. His chest tightened with each word Victoria spoke, the confidence in her voice, the respect in the host's tone, the applause at the end of the segment. This was the mother he dismissed as a burden. The woman he told was dragging him down, the person he shoved out of his life with cold ink and legal signatures. And she had risen higher than he could have imagined. For the first time, regret didn't just tap at his ribs, it crushed them. "What did we do?" he whispered, more to himself than to Lily. His voice cracked in a way she'd never heard. Lily didn't respond. She was busy typing on her phone, a message to Victoria dripping with false sweetness and rehearsed humility. "Congratulations. So amazing to see your success. Would love to reconnect." Victoria saw the message hours later as she waited backstage at another event. She didn't answer. She didn't even hesitate. She simply slid her phone back into her purse. Some doors, once closed, stayed that way. Weeks later, she walked across a velvet-carpeted stage at the Metropolitan Business Hall, her black gown sweeping softly behind her as the crowd rose in a standing ovation. The award in her hands, Entrepreneur of the Year, gleamed under the chandeliers. Photographers snapped feverishly. Flashes burst like fireworks. But the moment that hit her hardest was when she stepped up to the microphone. Sophia and Ben watched proudly from the front row. Her team filled the tables behind them, some holding back tears, others grinning widely. And for the first time since her birthday, that night of betrayal, that night of breaking, Victoria felt whole. She cleared her throat softly and spoke. "I stand here tonight not because I was lifted up, but because I refused to stay down. I didn't build this alone. I built it with people who believed in the power of resilience, innovation, and second chances." Her gaze swept the room, her voice steady. "To my team, thank you for trusting me when others didn't. To the mentors who guided me, your lessons shaped me more than you know. And to anyone who has ever been underestimated." She paused, letting the air still. "Let this be your reminder that you define your worth. No one else." Thunderous applause filled the hall. Sophia dabbed tears from her eyes. Ben clapped until his hands reddened. Victoria felt the weight of the moment settle warmly in her chest. As she stepped off the stage, an event coordinator rushed toward her, tablet in hand. "Ms. Miller," she said breathlessly, "we just received notice. There's someone here insisting they speak with you. Says it's urgent." Victoria froze, her heels halting mid-step. "Who?" The coordinator swallowed. "Your son." Victoria didn't slow her stride as she moved past the lobby doors, the echo of applause from the award ceremony still ringing faintly in her ears. The marble floor shimmered beneath the chandelier, and at the far end of the room stood Adam, shoulders slightly hunched, hands twisting together, eyes swollen with regret. But she walked right past him. Not abruptly, not cruelly, simply, deliberately. He whispered, "Mom, please." But she didn't turn. Not tonight. Not here. Not after everything. By the time she reached the waiting car outside, she had already decided. She wasn't opening that chapter again. 3 days later, a letter arrived at her office. Actual paper. Handwritten. Her name on the envelope in Adam's slightly uneven script. She stared at it for a long moment before opening it. Inside, the message sprawled across several pages, raw, unpolished, and painfully human. He apologized for everything. For the birthday dinner, for the disownment papers, for listening to Lily, for assuming she would always be there to fix whatever he broke. He wrote, "I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I'm asking for it anyway. I miss you, and I never understood what you were capable of." His words trembled with sincerity, the kind he'd never shown her before. Victoria folded the letter neatly, placed it inside her desk drawer, and closed it with a soft click. She didn't cry. She didn't smile. She didn't respond. Because success had given her something she never had before, the freedom to choose silence without guilt. And silence, in this case, was its own form of justice. Meanwhile, Lily began spinning her own narrative online. Her posts grew longer, more elaborate, dripping with forced humility. "We're all learning. Family is complicated. Proud of the strong women paving the way today." But the comments told a different story. People weren't buying it. Screenshots of her old jabs resurfaced. Users called out her hypocrisy. Brands quietly distanced themselves. What she had weaponized for attention now turned against her. While Lily fought her invisible battles on social media, Victoria was engaged in a far different war. One fought in conference rooms filled with investors and financial analysts. Miller Renewables was now mature enough to consider going public, and discussions had begun in quiet, glass-walled boardrooms overlooking Manhattan. Victoria sat at the head of the table, posture steady, voice calm as she reviewed the numbers. Taking the company public meant enormous capital, expansion, and influence. But it also meant scrutiny and pressure on a scale she had never experienced. Still, she met each challenge with the same resolve that brought her this far. Sophia watched her with awe. Ben kept pace beside her, offering insight and strategy, but always letting her lead. Her team stood a little taller each day, fueled by the momentum she created. Her success no longer surprised anyone. It inspired them. Then came another call from Adam. It rang late in the evening as she reviewed IPO projections in her office, the city sparkling beneath the window. She saw his name on the screen and let it ring twice before answering. His voice cracked immediately. "Mom, I'm losing everything." She leaned back in her chair, the receiver cool against her ear. "What happened?" He explained. Rushed decisions, clients leaving, investors pulling out, employees questioning leadership. The collapse wasn't sudden. It was the result of choices he once defended arrogantly. "I don't know what to do," he whispered. "I need your guidance. Please." Victoria's chest tightened, not with old wounds reopening, but with a deeper, more solemn understanding. He had finally run out of pride. "I'm sorry, Adam," she said quietly, "but I can't save your company." A sharp inhale on the other end. "Mom, please. I'm begging you." She closed her eyes, steadying her voice. "You made a decision about our relationship. You made it official. I'm only honoring what you chose." Silence. Then a broken, trembling. "I didn't know what I was walking away from." Victoria opened her eyes and stared at the city, the world she had built from nothing but pain and determination. "Neither did I," she said softly, "but I do now." And she ended the call. She sat in the dim office for a long moment, breathing slowly, deliberately. Outside, Manhattan pulsed with possibility. Inside, she felt lighter than she had in decades, not because she rejected him, but because she finally prioritized herself. Just as she began to pack her things, her phone chimed with a new email. From an investor, one whose name she recognized instantly. When she opened the message, her heart kicked against her ribs. They wanted to discuss a partnership, one that could take her company from national powerhouse to global empire. The news broke early on a crisp Tuesday morning, splashing across business channels with a bold, electric headline: "Miller Renewables poised for global acquisition. Industry shaken by possible record-breaking deal." Victoria saw it the moment she stepped into her office. Screens glowed with her company's name, voices on financial television praised her leadership, analysts debated the valuation like it was the most urgent topic in the world. She sipped her coffee slowly, absorbing the moment. She had built something undeniable, and now the world couldn't stop talking about it. Across the city, Adam sat on the edge of his bed staring blankly at the morning news. The anchor was practically beaming as he spoke about Victoria's meteoric rise. Experts predict the acquisition could make Victoria Miller one of the most influential women in global sustainability. Adam's stomach twisted. Every achievement she racked up, every headline celebrating her brilliance, struck him harder than the last. She wasn't the mother he once dismissed. She was a powerhouse, a visionary, a woman the world respected more than he ever had. Lily walked in holding her phone, her expression a mixture of irritation and disbelief. "She's everywhere again," she snapped. "Every post I scroll past is just her." Adam couldn't answer. His throat felt tight, his chest even tighter. He didn't deserve proximity to her success, and for the first time, he knew it. 3 days later, he saw her at a tech summit in Midtown, a glossy event filled with CEOs, investors, and industry giants. Victoria moved through the crowd with a calm confidence, flanked by Sophia on one side and Ben on the other. Adam approached slowly, anxiety clawing at him. "Mom!" Victoria turned. Her expression didn't harden. It didn't soften either. It simply didn't change at all. "Adam," she said coolly, "this isn't the place." He stepped forward, desperate. "I just want to talk." But she was already walking away, her attention shifting to a VP from an international firm who had been waiting to greet her. Without a backward glance, she left Adam standing alone in a crowd full of people who had never cared about him as much as the mother he threw away. That moment carved itself into him like stone. Lily's reaction was more predictable. She took to social media with a vaguely inspirational post written in faux sincerity. "Family loyalty matters most. Some people forget who was there before the fame." Expecting sympathy, she waited for her followers to flood her comments with support. Instead, they turned on her. Screenshots of her old insults resurfaced. People accused her of jealousy, hypocrisy, manipulation. A few asked outright why she hadn't supported Victoria from the start. By evening, she turned off comments entirely. She deleted the posts the next morning, but the internet never forgets. Meanwhile, Adam's company was unraveling at terrifying speed. Employees were leaving. Investors were withdrawing. A major lawsuit loomed in the background, threatening to flatten what little remained of his business. He sent Victoria another message, then another, all ignored. He called her office line once, voice heavy with defeat. The assistant politely declined on Victoria's behalf. He sent an email begging for a meeting, any meeting, a coffee, even 5 minutes. Victoria didn't even see it. Sophia, reviewing the inbox with her, said softly, "Do you want me to flag messages from him?" Victoria shook her head. "No need." It wasn't revenge. It was peace. Adam had made his choice long before she made hers. Late that night, after a board strategy session about the potential acquisition, Victoria stepped onto her balcony. Manhattan pulsed below her, alive, glittering, indifferent to the past. She rested her hands on the railing, breathing in the cool air. Her life was no longer defined by the people who underestimated her. Her success was no longer a reaction, it was a declaration. And somewhere in the city below, Adam and Lily were watching everything she had become, unable to touch a single inch of it. The distance felt right. As she turned to head inside, her phone buzzed with a notification. Not from Adam. Not from Lily. Not from an investor or employee. A message from an unknown number. "Ms. Miller. Urgent. We need to speak face-to-face about the acquisition. There's information you haven't been told." The envelope arrived on a Thursday morning, placed neatly on Victoria's desk by her assistant. Thick paper. Heavy. The kind used for weddings or formal invitations. Her name written in Adam's handwriting, though this time the strokes were strangely careful, almost hesitant. She didn't open it immediately. She finished her meeting, reviewed an international proposal, approved a product demo. Only when the office quieted did she finally slide a finger under the flap. 2 letters rested inside. One from Adam, one from Lily. Both typed. Both painfully polite. Both drenched in the tone of people who had rehearsed every word with trembling hands. We are deeply sorry. We understand the mistakes we made. We hope to reconcile. Your achievements have inspired us. Inspired? No. They were scrambling, trying to claw their way back into a world they had thrown her out of. She read every line, but her pulse never wavered, her chest never tightened, and not a single word pulled at the woman she used to be. She folded the letters, set them aside, and reached for her laptop. Her company's social media team had been asking for a personal statement, something to commemorate the global acquisition talks and the recognition she'd received. She'd avoided it until now, but the timing felt appropriate. She typed slowly, choosing each word with deliberate precision. Grateful for the mentors who showed me the value of resilience. Grateful for the team who built this dream beside me. And grateful for the journey, especially the parts that taught me to stand alone. It wasn't aimed at Adam or Lily, not openly, but they would read it. They would understand. The world would too. When the post went live, thousands of likes flooded in instantly. Comments poured in. Admiration, support, congratulations. Articles quoted her statement within hours. She hadn't said their names. She didn't need to. Her strength reverberated without calling out anyone at all. The unknown message from the night before had led to a confidential meeting with the global corporation considering the acquisition. It turned out to be nothing threatening, simply inside information on strategic decisions sent by an overeager junior executive. Still, the meeting proved fruitful. Now, Victoria was expanding aggressively. She met with brand partners in Tokyo over video conference while walking through the Manhattan office. She negotiated with renewable energy firms in Oslo. She inked a partnership with a Fortune 100 company in California that requested her personally. Her influence had become global. Not a passing headline, not a moment in the spotlight, but a sustained, powerful rise. Influencers shared her quotes. Business schools used her trajectory as a case study. Young women tagged her in posts about leadership and transformation, and through it all she remained composed, proud but grounded, driven not by validation but by purpose. But Adam and Lily saw everything. They watched her ascend while their lives slowly unraveled. Adam's company hemorrhaged clients. Former partners refused to return calls. Employees resigned. A potential bankruptcy filing hung over him like a storm cloud. Every time Victoria made headlines, Adam felt another piece of his world crack. He tried one more time, sending a long email detailing his failures, begging for guidance, pleading for her insight. Sophia noticed it in the inbox and paused. "Do you want—" "No," Victoria said firmly. "Archive it." There was no heat in her voice, no vengeance, just finality. She wasn't rejecting Adam out of cruelty. She was refusing to sacrifice herself for someone who had proven he would never value her. Meanwhile, Lily's online attempts at damage control were becoming laughable. She posted a story captioned, "Family loyalty is everything. Some people forget that." Her followers tore her apart within minutes. One comment read, "You only care about loyalty now that she's successful." Another, "We saw what you posted about her before. Sit this one out." Lily deleted the story before the hour ended. By early evening, Victoria stepped into her private office overlooking Central Park. The sky glowed with streaks of gold and violet. She placed Adam and Lily's apology letters into a drawer, the same drawer where Adam's first letter still rested. She didn't throw them out. She didn't respond. She simply closed the drawer, a symbolic burial, a quiet, irreversible goodbye. Just as she reached for her coat, her phone buzzed again, this time with a message from Ben. "We need to talk immediately. Something came up in the international audit." Victoria frowned. "What kind of issue?" He hesitated before replying. "Something about the acquisition negotiations, and it mentions your son." The room erupted the moment the final signature landed on the merger contract. Cheers burst through the conference hall as the Miller Renewables team rose to their feet, applause echoing against the glass walls that overlooked Central Park. Champagne corks cracked, laughter spilled into the air, and for the first time in years, Victoria allowed herself to stand still and simply absorb the joy around her. Sophia wrapped her arms around her, her voice warm with pride. "You did it, Vic. You really did." Ben lifted a glass from across the table. "To the woman who built a legacy out of sheer will." Victoria smiled, not wide, just enough. Enough to show she felt the moment settle in her bones. She had built something that outgrew every limitation placed on her. Something that would continue shaping the world long after she stepped away. She loved that. The news cycle roared as the merger hit national headlines. Victoria Miller reshapes global sustainability market, the deal that will change corporate energy forever. Commentators praised her long-term vision. CEOs she once admired now requested private meetings. Business schools announced plans to include her strategies in their curriculum. She had become an undeniable force in the global market. And Adam saw every headline. He watched from the quiet corner of his apartment, an apartment that felt smaller every day as his own company collapsed under bad decisions and worse luck. While Victoria's influence expanded across continents, Adam's world felt like it was shrinking by the hour. He didn't rant anymore. He didn't blame Lily or bad timing. He just faced it. For once in his life, he admitted the truth. He had been catastrophically wrong about his mother. Lily, however, refused to read the room. She had traded her designer outfits for relatable loungewear in her videos, pushing desperate narratives about personal growth. She hinted that her family had been misunderstood, that loyalty mattered more than success, that forgiveness was a virtue. Her followers weren't buying it. "You dragged her for years," one comment read. "Don't pretend you supported her," said another. Her voice, once her weapon, had lost its power. And Adam finally saw how much damage her influence had done. Worse, how easily he let it guide him. One night, after reading yet another article praising Victoria's leadership, he sat at the edge of his bed and whispered, "She deserved better than us." Lily stared at him like the words were an accusation. "She deserved better than me," he corrected quietly, "and I threw her away." For the first time, Lily had nothing to say. Meanwhile, Victoria moved through her success with a quiet sense of purpose. She attended strategy sessions for the global merger, recorded a keynote for an international conference, and toured a new research facility in Boston. But the moment that meant the most to her came quietly, in her office, with no camera crew or press. She donated a significant portion of her newfound wealth to a national nonprofit supporting women in business, funding grants, mentorships, incubators, and scholarships. When the foundation asked whether she wanted her name on the donation wall, she shook her head. "This isn't about recognition," she said. "This is about clearing a path for someone who needs it." Her legacy wasn't just the company, it was the doors she could finally hold open for others. That evening, as she reviewed a proposal from Tokyo, her assistant knocked gently and handed her a tablet. "There's something you need to see," she said. Victoria glanced down and froze. A breaking news banner flashed across the screen. Miller Tech faces federal investigation. Sources suggest link to Miller Renewables CEO. Her stomach tightened. This wasn't an accident. Someone was dragging her into Adam's downfall. Victoria hadn't planned on writing a book. The idea came from her publisher, then her team, then a wave of readers who wanted more than interviews and speeches. They wanted her story. The full one, the painful one, the triumphant one. When the biography finally hit shelves, it sold out in hours. Rising from the Ruins, the story of Victoria Miller. It became a bestseller within a week, topping charts nationwide, praised for its honesty, clarity, and emotional depth. Readers connected not just with her rise, but with the wounds she'd once hidden so carefully. She wrote about the birthday dinner, the disownment, the fear, the loneliness, the fury she turned into momentum. She wrote it all without bitterness, without embellishment, only truth. And that truth landed like a stone in Adam's chest. He read the book in a single night. Every chapter felt heavier than the last. The words peeled back layers of self-deception he had relied on for years. He saw himself, his cruelty, his indifference, his blindness, through the eyes of the mother he had abandoned. Lily read it too, though she skimmed the painful parts, focusing instead on the passages that made her look less monstrous. But even she couldn't escape the quiet horror of realizing how small she appeared in Victoria's world. Petty, superficial, utterly forgettable. There was no villain in the book, no targets, no revenge. But the absence of their names in any meaningful, warm context hurt more than any accusation could have. Victoria had built an empire, a legacy, a global movement. Without them. A week after finishing the book, Adam showed up outside her Manhattan headquarters, clutching a copy with sticky notes jutting out from every page. When he stepped into her office, he looked nothing like the man he'd been. No arrogance, no entitlement, only exhaustion and remorse. "Mom," his voice broke instantly. "I'm sorry. Really, truly sorry. I didn't understand your life. I didn't understand you." Victoria listened. She didn't interrupt, didn't rush, didn't soften. "I see now what you went through," he said, wiping his eyes. "And I see how cruel I was. You deserve so much better. I want you to know that." For a long moment she regarded him, the son she had loved fiercely, the man who had thrown her out like she was weight around his ankles. Finally she spoke. "Thank you for saying that." His shoulders trembled with relief. "Then, maybe we can try again?" Victoria's expression remained gentle but unshaken. "Adam, I don't need your approval anymore, and I don't have room in my life for people who only show up when I've already climbed out on my own." He closed his eyes, absorbing the blow he knew he'd earned. "It's too late," she said softly. "I've moved forward." Adam nodded weakly, understanding in full what he had lost. Not a billionaire, not a leader, but a mother who had never wanted anything from him but love. He left without another word. Lily tried a more dramatic approach online, teary videos, long captions about growth and second chances, subtle jabs aimed at shifting blame. None of it landed. Her audience was done with her narrative. The world had chosen its hero, and it was Victoria. Meanwhile, Victoria's life only expanded. She launched a mentorship program for young women in business, full scholarships, leadership retreats, one-on-one coaching. She funded incubators across the country, visited universities to speak about resilience, and personally advised first-time founders navigating the corporate maze. When she walked into a room of young entrepreneurs, they lit up. She wasn't just a business mogul. She was proof that reinvention was possible at any age, from any point of pain. Her success had become a gift, not to Adam, not to Lily, but to countless women who finally believed they could build something of their own. Late one evening, after mentoring a group of first-generation founders, she stepped into her office overlooking the quiet city. She picked up a framed photo of her team from the merger celebration, smiling, laughing, unstoppable. Her life felt full, complete, unshadowed by old wounds. But just as she set the photo down, her phone buzzed with an unexpected message from an unknown contact. 4 words. Victoria, you're not safe. Attached was a document, sealed, stamped, and marked confidential, bearing the name of someone she never expected to see again. The auditorium lights dimmed as Victoria stepped onto the stage of the Global Leadership Summit, her silhouette framed by a massive screen displaying her name. Thousands of attendees rose to their feet, applause swelling like a wave. Cameras flashed. Journalists leaned forward. Her presence commanded the room with an ease she had earned one battle at a time. She adjusted the mic, letting the applause fade on its own. When she began to speak, her voice carried across the hall, steady, warm, and impossibly sure of itself. She spoke of resilience, of reinvention, of the silent strength required to rebuild from nothing, and of the power women possessed when they were finally allowed to lead. Her keynote was less a speech and more a rallying cry, one that left the audience breathless. By the time she exited the stage, the summit organizers were calling it the most influential address the event had ever hosted. Across the city, Adam and Lily watched the live stream from their couch. They didn't speak. There was nothing left to say. Lily's arms stayed crossed, her expression brittle. Adam leaned forward, elbows on his knees, torn between awe and a grief he could no longer ignore. Every sentence Victoria spoke tightened the coil of regret in his chest until it almost hurt to breathe. They couldn't undo the past. They couldn't erase the cruelty. They could only watch as the woman they threw away became a global icon. After the summit, Victoria's world expanded even further. Corporations lined up to partner with Miller Renewables. Invitations poured in from governments, nonprofits, and universities. She was no longer just a CEO. She had become the face of a global movement for women in business. She launched the Miller Global Foundation, funneling resources into women-led companies across underdeveloped countries. Her programs created jobs, funded ideas, and placed power directly into the hands of women who had been overlooked for generations. This time, the world noticed, and so did Adam and Lily. Desperate, they made a public apology, standing together in a video, speaking about family healing and personal growth. But it fell flat instantly. Comments flooded in calling them opportunistic, insincere, late. The world knew the truth. Victoria owed them nothing. Victoria ended the night surrounded by people who admired her not because of obligation, but because of impact. Sophia squeezed her hand. Ben raised a glass. Her team laughed as they recounted moments from the summit. For the first time in her life, she felt wholly seen, wholly valued, wholly untouchable. But as she stepped out onto the hotel balcony to breathe in the cool night air, her phone buzzed. A new message. Unknown number. One sentence. If you think today was victory, wait until you see what's coming. Victoria's smile slowly faded. The message from the unknown number lingered in the back of Victoria's mind, but it didn't slow her momentum. If anything, it sharpened her focus. Threats came with power. She'd learned that long ago. And now, with the merger behind her, her empire was expanding faster than anyone had predicted. Within months, she diversified her portfolio: sustainable energy, AI-driven environmental tech, urban infrastructure innovation, education platforms for underserved communities. Every investment was strategic, intentional, and aligned with the world she wanted to help build. Not just profitable, impactful. She sat at the head of long mahogany tables during executive briefings, stood on the decks of wind farms in the Midwest, toured research centers developing next-generation solar glass. She moved through it all with calm command, her influence rippling across industries previously dominated by men who once ignored her emails. She wasn't just part of the future, she was shaping it. Mentorship became her anchor. Twice a week, she met with young women, some fresh out of college, others rebuilding their lives mid-career, guiding them through the maze of entrepreneurship. She listened, challenged, encouraged, and opened doors that had once been slammed in her own face. These sessions grounded her, gave her purpose beyond contracts and valuations. She saw her younger self in their determination, their fear, their hunger. "You don't need permission," she told them, "just direction." They believed her because she'd lived it. Adam reached out only once more, a voice message, short, quiet, raw. He didn't defend himself, didn't ask for anything. He simply told her he respected her, that he hoped she was happy, and that he was trying to become someone she would have been proud of. Victoria listened all the way through, her expression unreadable. Then she set her phone down. No anger, no sadness, just acceptance. She didn't call back. Some chapters didn't need revisiting, not even for closure. Lily, meanwhile, made a public statement praising Victoria's achievements. It was professional, polite, and miles away from sincerity. The public treated it like noise. Victoria didn't bother to read the full transcript. That bridge had burned long ago. One late evening, as the city glowed beneath her office windows, Victoria reviewed the blueprint for her next ambitious project, a global accelerator for women-led climate tech ventures. It was bold, expansive, world-shifting, exactly the kind of mark she intended to leave. "This is just the beginning," she murmured. She believed it. Her empire wasn't a monument to revenge, it was a beacon of possibility for women everywhere who'd been told to stay small. But as she closed her laptop, her assistant appeared in the doorway, pale. "Victoria, there's been a breach." Victoria straightened. "Where?" "Not here," the assistant whispered. "In the foundation. Someone accessed your private files." The breach investigation moved quietly into the background as Victoria's empire surged forward. But for Adam and Lily, life continued collapsing in sharp, unforgiving waves. Their apartment grew emptier, first emotionally, then physically. Furniture was sold to cover legal fees. Adam's company dissolved under the weight of debts he couldn't restructure. Lily's sponsorships dried up, brands distancing themselves from her reputation volatility. The curated image they'd once lived behind now felt like a cruel joke. They watched from the sidelines as Victoria stood in front of global audiences, her name tied to progress, innovation, and hope. Every headline praising her success served as a reminder of the person they had discarded with cold signatures and calculated indifference. The truth sank in slowly, painfully. They had never really known her at all. Victoria, meanwhile, never paused, never flinched, never let the regrets of others tug her off her course. She focused on her foundation, on her global partnerships, on the accelerator program she was building to uplift women who reminded her of the version of herself that once sat alone in a tiny apartment, staring at a blank notebook and wishing she felt worthy. Her assistant briefed her on the breach, and though troubling, Victoria remained impenetrably calm. She had learned long ago that panic solved nothing. Vision solved everything. When she walked through the headquarters, employees straightened with pride. Young founders looked at her like she had carved a doorway into a future they once believed was closed to them. And in quiet moments between meetings, she allowed herself to feel the depth of what she had built. Not the riches, not the power, but the certainty. Her worth had never belonged to Adam. or Lily, or anyone else. It had always been hers. Across town, Adam finally reached the point where the truth could no longer be avoided. He met Sophia in a small cafe, hands clasped, shoulders sagging. "I failed her," he said quietly, eyes glistening. "I didn't just lose my mother, I threw her away." Sophia studied him for a long moment before responding gently but firmly. "Some things," she said, "aren't fixable. Not because she's unforgiving, but because she finally learned to protect herself." Adam nodded, absorbing each word like a wound being sutured closed without anesthesia. He understood now. No apology would ever unwind the damage. No regret would ever reopen the door. He had learned the lesson too late. That night, Victoria stood on her balcony, the wind cool against her skin. She felt peace, not born of triumph over anyone, but triumph over herself, over fear, over doubt. Over the years, she'd been told to stay small. But just as she turned to go inside, her phone vibrated. A new alert, a breach update. One detail highlighted in bold: the data was accessed using a password created years before by someone in your family. The breach investigation continued in the background, but Victoria didn't let it steal the stillness she had fought so hard to earn. For the first time in her life, peace wasn't something fragile or conditional. It lived in her, steady, grounded, unshakable. One quiet evening, she stood in her penthouse office as the sun melted into the Manhattan skyline. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed the city she had rebuilt her life in, the city that once overwhelmed her, now glowing like a tribute to her resilience. She wasn't anxious. She wasn't waiting for the next crisis. She wasn't looking over her shoulder for validation or permission. She had done it. Truly done it. On her own terms. Her team gathered in the lounge behind her, laughing, strategizing, celebrating the progress of the accelerator program she'd launched. These people weren't here because of obligation or blood. They were here because they valued her, believed in her, grew with her. Sophia caught her eye and raised her glass from across the room. Victoria offered a small smile in return. Ben waved a report at her with a grin, mouthing, "You're going to love this," before disappearing back into a discussion with the research leads. These were the people who mattered. The ones who showed up. The ones who stayed. Adam and Lily had drifted into their own separate futures. Their lives had reshaped themselves without her, and she felt no ache at the distance. Some chapters ended without fireworks, just quiet acceptance. Tonight, she let that truth settle in her bones. She walked to her small bar cart, uncorked a bottle of wine she'd been saving for years, and poured a single glass. The deep red shimmered under the soft light, rich and calm. She lifted it in a silent toast to the woman she had become. Stronger, wiser, and finally whole. Not because she was wealthy, not because she was famous, but because she had survived herself, her doubts, her fears, her years of shrinking to make others comfortable. Her phone buzzed on the counter. Not a threat this time, not regret, not noise. Dozens of messages from young entrepreneurs she mentored. Updates about their funding, their breakthroughs, their victories. Messages thanking her for believing in them before they believed in themselves. Her legacy wasn't the company, it was the courage she sparked in others. She took a slow sip of wine, breathing in the serenity she'd earned drop by drop over years of rebuilding. She was content. Deeply, quietly content. And as the city lights flickered beneath her like a constellation she'd claimed piece by piece, she whispered the truth she now carried like armor. "They left me behind, but I built the life I always deserved, and I did it on my own terms."